Welcome to this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast, where we look forward to shaving every day. Welcome to episode 54 of the podcast. My name is Rick DeWeese. I'll be your host this week. This week, we're going to do something different. We're going to go on a voyage. We're going to travel to a faraway place. In fact, we're even going to travel to a different hemisphere. Because right now, on the phone, I have none other than Con Kazantzidis. Now, if you don't know who Con is a maker of videos on YouTube that are related to wet shaving. And I was able to catch up with Con at his mountain retreat in Australia. And I must say, if you're an aspiring YouTuber, you need to listen to the end of this interview to get helpful hints and tips for video productions from the man himself. Because quite honestly, the video production quality, and in fact the audio quality, of the productions of Con Kazantzidis is fabulous. They are some of the best videos that I've ever seen. And this is just a guy doing videos, but these things are of professional quality. They are well worth seeing. They carry a lot of information. Con, as you will hear in this interview, does a lot of research prior to doing his videos, and it shows. So sit back, relax, enjoy. I'm not going to do any letters this week because, well, this interview ran a bit long, and I'm sorry, even though editing sometimes is a good thing, in this case, I didn't cut much. It was that good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to Con. He does have there's his YouTube channel, which I'll put up on the blog so that you can subscribe to it. I highly recommend subscribing to his YouTube channel. And then there's also his Facebook group, Shave the Man, which I also highly recommend joining. Let's get on with this interview and hear about the wet shaving scene in Australia. At the outset, who is Con?
Well, Con is it's a man with many personas, I have to say, Rick. I wear many hats through the week. I have a radio show here in Sydney.
Okay.
On the radio called 2MM between 5 and 6. And when I'm not doing that, I'm shaving, having fun. I just recently sold a business. I used to run a cafe. I ran that for about 15 years and decided to give that away. And now I've got a little bit of time on my hands.
Well, hopefully you didn't give it away. And I did notice Chris Bailey had put up a thing on Facebook for, tell us a little bit about yourself. And you had mentioned the cafe, and I was like, coffee. That's good stuff.
It certainly is. Oh yeah, it's one of the things. Well, it's a performance enhancing drug for me. So I need it every.
I understand completely. Yeah, I spoil myself. I buy green beans and roast them myself at home in a cast iron pan, and then I have fresh ground coffee most mornings, and just absolutely thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, that's the only way to do it, sir.
One of the things that I noticed is, well, you have a YouTube channel, but you haven't been on YouTube for very long. You've been on YouTube since January, if I am reading the signs correctly. What got you into YouTube all of a sudden?
Well, I just decided that. Firstly, I'm a consumer of YouTube. I watch YouTube quite a bit. I enjoy the content on YouTube because I can select and elect to see what I want to see when I want to see it. And I have noticed over the last 3 or 4 years that the quality of content has improved. And one of the wonderful things, of course, with YouTube is that you just type into the little search bar there. You type in a question or you look up a word or whatever the case may be, and you get a whole list of videos that may interest you. And of course, one of the things that I'm absolutely passionate about is wet shaving. So I decided to use my skills because I was a teacher before I had a cafe. That might be another thing that you would have read in that little post in Facebook. I was a science and mathematics teacher, and communication has been one of the things that I've always been passionate about. Sharing experiences with like-minded people, and facilitating those learning experiences. And so I figured that I'd take the plunge and do my own videos. So it all began way back in January. That very first video I deliberately left up there because it was relatively amateurish if you compare it to the videos, the subsequent videos that followed.
That first video was in your bathroom. It really, I mean, you did an excellent job on it. But then subsequent videos were outside in a library, and now you've got a very interesting setup. I saw some that you had a sink set up in front of a white screen, and now it seems like you have a black screen. And what's been the evolution there?
Well, essentially, what I wanted to do was, as I say, I consume a lot of YouTube videos, and particularly a lot of shaving videos. And I have to say at the outset that I enjoy all videos, and I think on a continuum. I mean, every video has its place. I think there are videos obviously with guys that sit there and look at you, look back in the middle, look into the mirror and shave, and I think those are very, very useful. I love those videos. There are others that where guys are reviewing product. So I thought, why not? I see this as a conversation, Rick. It's a great conversation. It's a way of speaking with other people, even though when you're doing it, it's kind of a solitary sort of exercise. You're just speaking into a camera. But I try and ignore the camera, so to speak, and try and go beyond that. I know that sounds a little bit corny, but that's what I do. And I just think, well, I want to communicate to the people that are out there. Even if I'm communicating with 5 or 6 or 7 people, that's enough for me. And so I figured that what is it that I would like to see when I see a video? Well, I guess that's what I did. I sort of sat down and thought about it carefully, and the first thing I thought was, well, it's got to be high definition. HD is probably the way to go. And so I looked at that and what I could do to improve the production, and stayed away from uploading anything for some time. You'll note that the first one was way back in January, but then the others sort of started to ramp up in June, July. So I did the research and I thought, okay, what are the things that I need to do? And I just ended up where we are today.
Well, it's very interesting that you should say that, because as a podcaster, I do the same thing. If there's only 1 or 2 people, I probably wouldn't do it. But it's one of those things where I'm here and I'm having to speak to an audience that I know is out there. And so, it's you get beyond the microphone. You almost imagine in your head who you're speaking to, and you go from there. And so I understand completely. It makes complete sense to me. I think you do an excellent job at it. I really do. I have enjoyed your videos, and in fact, right before this, the reason that I had to take a minute is because I was actually using an ultrasonic cleaner to clean some of my razors. So, and you did an excellent job explaining that and explaining the benefits of that, which I found very, very nice. So, thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Rick. I think one of the first things that I do before I even start to think about a video is I ask myself a question. There has to be a question. That's the starting point.
Okay.
So I say, what is it? I ask myself a question, and then I think, well, how could I answer this question? And of course, we've all heard that, if you want to learn something, then you've got to know how to teach it as well. So it's one of these sort of relationships that occurs between the learner and the teacher. And of course, this is the teaching side of things coming out of that expresses itself in this moment. So with the ultrasonic cleaner, for instance, I thought, okay, a lot of guys are saying that their DE razors they look a little bit tired after a while. There's a lot of soap scum on them and all the rest of it. So the question is, how do you get that stuff off your razor? And so I start to research that based on that particular question. And then I just spend a bit of time, look at it. I make sure that when I talk about these things in the videos, I don't just talk about them because I've Googled or searched searched for an answer to something. I actually go out in there and do it myself. I'm not going to talk about something if I haven't done it myself. Particularly with if I'm looking at soaps or a particular product, the little rule that I have is I have to have used it a minimum of 3 to 5 times, somewhere there at least. I won't pick up a puck of soap and start lathering it for the very first time on YouTube. Not because I think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's an enormous value in doing that as well, because we share with the person that's showing us that we share the excitement. That has its own intrinsic value. But I think that a viewer wants to get to the bottom of and get some answers when they're watching these videos. And I think one of the most valuable things is the commentary that follows the video. One particular viewer said, "Look, you haven't answered the question to one of the videos."
Mm-hmm.
And I respected that enormously, because I actually hadn't answered the question. But in my mind, I thought I had. So I guess that sort of constructive criticism has helped the channel evolve in many ways. The other thing, of course, is I'm also quite mindful of the time that I spend producing the video and also the time that the viewer spends watching it. I think most shave videos run, an average of 25 minutes. There's an introduction. We talk about the products that we're going to use. The person shaves, and then their concluding remarks. I try and keep the videos under 6 minutes.
Gotcha.
Christopher Bailey once said, this is 5 or 6 or 10 minutes of your life that you'll never get back again. It's got to be valuable, and at least with the research that I've done on retention, I mean, you've really essentially only got 90 seconds to at least create a point of reference with the viewer. If you can't create that connection within the first 90 seconds, then the viewer will just turn off. It's as simple as that. So these were the things that I was and am incredibly mindful of. There's nothing worse than having to flick through and even being told, speed across to 10 minutes and 38 seconds where I start something else.
Absolutely.
I've forced myself to learn to cut and to edit. The most important thing in these things is cutting and editing. It's what you don't show. And you make a decision as you go along, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. The thing that I find that is most appealing about your videos is, first off, the obvious production quality of them is just, in my mind, top notch. I've rarely come across YouTube videos that have the production value that yours do. So from that aspect, good job. The other thing that I think is also very, very evident in your videos is that you have not only used the products, but you have also researched immensely. It's an amazing. I feel like I'm learning things that I can't get anywhere else just by watching your videos, and for that I thank you. The production of your YouTube channel, how long does it take for you to do that?
Well, it takes anywhere between 10 to 7 days for me to think about what it is that I want to do the research. Obviously, if I'm talking about a product, then I would have been using it for longer than 10 or 7 days. And as I say, I generally have a rule. I need to have used something at least 3 to 5 times. And I try and vary the way in which I use the product. I mean, variables are very, very important. Our hobby involves so much subjectivity that I try and cover as many bases as possible. It's impossible to do so, of course, but again, that's one of the challenges that I try and overcome. But anywhere between 10 to 7 days, and then once I've got the research, it takes me, well, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 hours before I decide exactly how I'm going to put this video together, and then I do a very basic storyboard, if I can call it that, which probably takes about an hour. So it's quite a time-consuming process, I have to say.
Well, the episodes that you've put out have been very, very nice, and it's very obvious that you're putting a lot of time and effort into them. And as a viewer, as a consumer of your videos, I do greatly appreciate it. You're obviously passionate about wet shaving. How did you get into wet shaving?
Well, I have to say that my late father was a man who of course used a traditional razor, and I would often hear him while he was in the bathroom. I mean, he used razors that sung, down the hallway. They provided a lot of feedback, and I often wondered what he was doing and how he was doing it, and whether he was feeling any pain. I immediately associated him doing what he was doing in there, as a painful thing. He's cutting whiskers. He's bringing a very, very sharp blade to his face, but it didn't seem to bother him. I thought, well, that's interesting. So one day I walked into the bathroom and I said, "Look, Dad, can you show me how this, how all this works?" And he said, "The day will come where I will, son." I think I was about 12 or something, so I hadn't quite had, substantial whiskers anyway. Some years later, maybe about a couple of years later, he said, "Sit down. I'm gonna lather your face." And so he used a brush and soap and lathered my face in the traditional way. And I all of a sudden realized that there's a ritual, there's a process. It's more than just removing whiskers from the face. I could see that he went into some sort of I don't know. He was quite systematic. There was something about it, quite ordered, that I loved about it. Of course, the whole process was very tactile as well. It involved and engaged all the senses. I could smell the soap. I could see what he was doing. I could feel it on my skin when he was lathering. So I thought, I can see why he wants to do this. Of course, this is something that he was encouraged to do when he was in the army, and he wanted to instill that in me. I have to say that initially I didn't really appreciate it as much as I should have. But he did enough, I believe, in those formative years to develop and at least plant the seed in me. And then I guess the interest developed. I have to say that I lost the way, as we all do, with the goo in the can and the 5-blade plastic junk that we were, duped into thinking was going to give us a better and closer shave. And then, I'd have to say about 5 or so years ago, I decided to give the thing a flick and return to DE shaving. It's my father that did it. And even though I wasn't engaging in shaving in that way when he was around, it was enough to spark an interest. So I think it's very important that, and we've discussed this, that a lot of what men do in the bathroom these days, is there's a lot of mystery and mystique. It's all done behind closed doors, and it's not something that we can share with other younger men. And one of the things that I take great heart in is that a lot of the members in these forums and Facebook groups are younger men, and that fills me with joy, I have to say, Rick.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You've said a couple of things that really have kind of struck home for me. I feel the same way. I got to experience, showing my sons how to shave in a traditional fashion. I also do a lot with Boy Scouts. When I am out camping with my Boy Scouts, I will shave. It's just the way I was in my mind. That is a correct way to approach the day. If the good Lord is willing to set a day in front of me that is filled with the beauty and joy that it is filled with, then my obligation is to present myself to that scene in as clean and fit a situation as I can. That's just my makeup. And so, when I'm out camping with my scout troop, for example, I will shave in the morning. I will shave right there in front of them so that they have an opportunity to see it and ask questions if they want to, and we can converse and exchange ideas. And I've really I've enjoyed that. I really have. And so seeing the YouTube videos and seeing pictures on Instagram of fathers showing their young boys how to shave and sharing the excitement and the love for the process is exactly right. It's extremely heartwarming for me as well. Now, you did say something that was interesting. You returned later in life to wet shaving. Just out of curiosity, what was the first DE razor when you came back to it that you started with?
It was a Gillette Aristocrat.
Excellent choice.
Yeah. And it was actually, and my mother said to me, "Look, this is your father's razor. I think you should have it." He passed away about 10 years ago. And so I kept it, of course, and I kept it because it offered fond memories of my father. But it was almost as if the baton had been passed on, you know. That was enough for me, Rick. It really was. I thought, even though I didn't embrace traditional DE shaving, in my sort of late teens, enough was done for me to pick up on this. And even in a lot of the educational psychology literature, this sort of thing is part of what they call the hidden curriculum. It's something that is implicit in what facilitators, enablers, people that are with young people do. It's the things that you do that aren't taught explicitly. In other words, if your scouts see you shaving, quite often that is enough to generate interest, even if they're not going to ask you about it. They will carry that with them, and the day will come where they'll say, "You know what? I remember our scoutmaster shaving out in the wilderness there, and I'm just curious about it. I wonder why he chose to do that and not go with goo in a can." That is incredibly powerful. Whereas if you tell the boys that they need to shave using a DE, razor and all the rest of it, well, then I guess it comes across as being rather prescriptive, and in many ways can, I think, discourage young folk to get involved. But doing what you're doing, I think, is a wonderful thing. I think a lot of young people learn this way. Do as I do, not as I say necessarily, but not exactly. But you know what I'm saying. It's
yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And when you come across, especially to young men, and say this is what you need to do, it becomes challenging. And just by their very nature, they're not going to buy into that willingly, and they will naturally resist, as we all did at that age. And you may have lost the battle at that point.
Exactly.
You're down in Sydney, Australia, and Australia has a much different wet shaving scene, I'm sure, than the United States does. Here in the United States, there are products galore. Shipping isn't too awful bad. There's artisan makers coming out of the woodwork right now. Just what's the wet shaving scene in Australia?
Well, the wet shaving scene is in its infancy, I have to say. There is, I'm pleased to say that the scene itself is emerging. There are some young men that have taken on this hobby, but they can only take on as much as is available to them. There are probably about 3 or 4 vendors here in this country that are based locally and that can ship for free if you purchase over a certain amount. I think it's about $30 or $40. And so a lot of guys take up that. But the products are what I would call very sort of stock standard kind of products, the sort of products that are all very good. There's nothing wrong with them, of course. But if they want to want to find out more about the hobby and they jump on the internet or search YouTube, they'll be hearing about soaps that they are not able to acquire, or B, if they are, then the shipping is quite prohibitive. And that has been a problem here in this country. I have to say that it is changing. I'm very pleased to see that it is changing ever so slowly, because what these vendors, of course, are doing is they are responding to the market. If there is a demand, then they will do whatever they can to bring these products into the country and to supply them to the young men, that usually young men. There are some women, as I say, that are also interested in purchasing these products, either as a gift or for themselves, at a reasonable price. But I have to say that the scene, compared to the United States, is well and truly in its infancy. In fact, I'd even go as far as saying it's embryonic. We haven't arrived as yet, but we want to change all of that, of course, Rick.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think just the fact that your videos are out there, I think that helps a lot. I know that you're also doing a lot with Facebook groups. Could you tell us about the Facebook group that you have, Shave the Man?
Shave the Man. We just it's a Facebook group that was started. I'd say probably about maybe 5 or 6 months ago. We put this thing together, and I decided to invite friends along, and we would talk about shaving, and we would talk about all the things that people talk about in the forums. And then I slowly started to introduce the SOTD, the shave of the day, encourage the men to take photographs and post them onto Facebook and talk about their shave and talk about their experiences with shaving. And of course, they were reluctant to do so initially, but of course, as they saw that others were doing it, they were getting better at it. They were becoming masters of composing the shave of the day, putting the products together and photographing them and then talking about them. And now I'm happy to say that a lot of the guys don't feel in any way intimidated and are now swimming in a slightly larger pond, because I'm happy to say that a lot of our brothers from the United States and from the Netherlands and Germany and Canada have joined to the Shave the Man group, which has become truly now an international group. And I'm still encouraged by the fact that a lot of these Australian young men, and they are young men in their 20s, some we even have in their late teens, are still feel confident enough to be able to post in what they now know is a larger pond. You see, you have big fish in a small pond, but then when the pond gets a little bit bigger, the big fish now all of a sudden feel a little bit smaller. But this I think presents an opportunity for learning, and I think that we never stop learning, as you well know, Rick. And I think that the group now has taken on, well, it's snowballed, I have to say, and I'm delighted that there is a lot of cross-pollination that is occurring with other groups, with larger groups. And I think as confidence builds and as the hobby grows in this country, then we'll see more and more men that will participate.
Well, yeah, that's a very excellent point. The thing that I found interesting in that was the statement that perhaps young men don't have the confidence. First off, just for anybody listening, yeah, I've been doing this a while, but I still make mistakes. It's still a learning process. I'm playing right now with a slant razor, and depending on what blade I put in it, I still nick and cut myself with the silly thing. This is a never-ending process, so even if you've just started out, there is absolutely no reason not to get involved, not to jump in, not to communicate with fellow wet shavers on Facebook groups, not to watch, YouTube videos. This is one of the best things about the hobby, in my opinion, is that it is open to all, and hopefully, when people do jump in, they are greeted with the same philosophy that we're all learning all the time. Somebody may have experience with something, but not something else. One of the things that I've found, anyhow, is a lot of nuances, a lot of descriptions of things that I pick up. I pick up actually from new shavers who don't have any experience yet, and that's what it really expands for me the whole thing. Because, for example, one of the things that I ran into that I've talked about before is there was a guy at work that I introduced to traditional shaving, and he said, okay, I went and I tried it, and he said the one thing that I noticed that I found absolutely exquisite was the fact that the razor, the metal of the razor, when I rinsed it in warm water, picked up the heat, and it was that feel of that warm razor metal against my skin, not necessarily the blade, but the head of the razor transmitting that warmth that really created a luxurious and almost sensual feel. Now, I'd been wet shaving for a long time. I never thought of that. I went back the next day, and when I got home that afternoon, I actually whipped up a lather and shaved and went, holy cow. And that was from somebody who'd never done it before. The thing that I'm trying to say is that new shavers have just as much to contribute to the whole scene, the whole scene of wet shaving as us old guys.
It's interesting. What they bring to the landscape is something that perhaps more experienced shavers and practitioners would probably either take for granted or have learnt to deal with, the sorts of challenges that shaving may initially have presented to them, and they just get on. And then some guy comes in and says, "Hey, but what if I swap the blade over, or shave with, there's this trend at the moment, shaving with cold water, right? Everyone wants to shave with cold water and test the whole cold water thing. I've found that the guys in Shave the Man group, it's the new guys that are wanting to test this cold water thing.
Yeah, it's it is something very interesting, and part of the reason that I don't like shaving with cold water, and again, this is just me, is because of my military experience. We had to.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I'm very happy to hear that from your perspective, in your country, that you have a lot of young men that are jumping into the hobby and learning, and I think that is great because that's the future, as they say. If the hobby was just a bunch of old people, it would slowly go away. And even if a few people picked it up as they became old, it would still probably, just from a population standpoint, slowly die. So, the good news is I don't think that's going to happen. The other thing that I've noticed, at least, is that there has been a huge explosion of artisans and things like that. So hopefully that trend will continue, and the demand that is cropping up in other places will be met.
Absolutely. Look, I read a post today in one of the Facebook groups that there perhaps is a saturation of artisan products on the market currently, and whether other members of the group agreed with this. And I have to say, up until recently, when I was reading the post and following it, the overwhelming majority of members said that it's a wonderful thing that we have this proliferation of artisan soap makers out there, because firstly, it keeps everyone on their toes. Secondly, it produces and brings forth innovation, which is a wonderful thing. And of course, one of the great points that was brought to the attention of those that were following the post was, would you rather Gillette look after your soaps, or Procter & Gamble? I know I shouldn't be mentioning companies, but I will. I mean, it's as simple as that. Would you rather these large multinational companies look after your shaving needs, or would you rather have these dedicated men and women that work and put in these enormous amount of hours? I mean, you say that I put in hours with my videos. I mean, I spare a thought for some of these guys and these women that spend a lot of time and put in a lot of love into these products for our shaving community. Now, you can be cynical and say, yes, they're doing it for the buck. I don't believe that. I believe that there are other ways to make money. If you want, staying up till 2 and 3 in the morning, making sure that your soap hasn't gone off, for me, is not in it for the buck. I think they're doing a wonderful job, and I salute each and every one of them. I think they're doing a remarkable job, and I think it's great for our hobby and our passion.
Well, I will agree with you completely, and the The Facebook post that you are referring to, of course, it was Chris Bailey stirring it up once again. I give him a hard time, but he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And you got to keep in mind that if you really want Gillette to take care of your shaving needs, they will figure out what they can patent so that they can make money off of your pain and suffering, because it's about the money. It's not about giving you a great shaving experience. Whereas the artisan, not only the artisan soap makers, but the artisan brush manufacturers, and in fact now the razor manufacturers, are creating things, whether it be soap, brushes, or razors, that really bring the bar of shaving back to a level where it is in fact better. And that's the thing that I find very intriguing and luminary even, is that it took me a while to realize that, you're not getting a better shave with more blades. And somehow, somewhere, we got away from that. And it's only, some of us who sometimes are thought of as, slightly crazy for going back to the vintage razors and things. But then you realize that that there are companies now that are making double-edged razors, and in fact, things like the Cobra or the Mongoose, which are coming out, or Razor Rock slants, or things like that. There's a lot of razors that are being designed by people who truly love shaving, and they're really doing a marvelous job at creating this stuff that really is great quality.
Absolutely, and I think that these people that are putting in these hours and creating these wonderful products know that they have to be true to the hobby. They know that they will be outed. They know that if they're going to produce a product which is substandard and subpar, then the community will just say, "I'm sorry, but this isn't what we expect. This isn't what we would like from our shaving experience," and they will vote with their feet. So I think to suggest rather cynically that talking about artisan soap makers or people that design razors, or you mentioned Razor Rock, you mentioned these people do it, but you can't subject yourself to that sort of pressure and those time. I mean, these people are impoverished in terms of their time. They have very little time for their own personal lives, and they're putting hours and hours in developing these products. And so they know, they are very mindful that because our community is very sensitive to these things, if you're immediately seen to have the best interests of everyone, not only themselves but even their consumers, as one of their primary goals, then people will just give it the big thumbs down, Rick. It's as simple as that.
Oh, absolutely. It's it really is interesting, and it's one of those things that when you the thing that is amazing is the community as a whole, I've found, is extremely passionate about what it is we do every day, or however often we shave. And being so passionate, they do cast a keen eye on anything that comes in and tries to make any headway in that community. And if it is received well, it is trumpeted. And if it is not received well, it kind of goes away quickly.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Rick, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Could I call somebody from Gillette tonight and ask them a question about their soap or their goo in a can?
You could try, but I doubt very seriously that you would get through, first off, to a human being, and if you did, you would probably not be talking to anybody who had any competence at all in what it was they were talking about.
Well, let me tell you, I asked, so I'm going to mention his name, I have to. I actually private messaged Chris Cullen and asked him a few questions. Now, he could have told me to go jump. He could have said, "Look, I don't have any time for you. I don't want to answer your questions. I don't know who you are. I wouldn't know you from a bar of soap," pun intended. Go. This man was able to not only answer my questions, but left the door wide open and says, listen, if you want to continue this discussion, by all means do so. He's a gentleman, right? He produces top quality product. This is just an example. There are many that produce top quality product. I'm just thinking, but he was able to respond to my questions because I'm doing a little bit of research for an upcoming video. And so, he was there. Try doing that with Gillette.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you just can't. I don't know if you listened to the podcast. I did an interview with him a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that I found amazing is that he basically he takes care of, if I understand correctly, he takes care of the kids during the day and then does most of his soap making at night. And he when I was talking to him, he said, when I was setting up the interview, he said, I apologize for not getting back to you fast enough. And I'm like, my gosh, basically every time I put something out on the internet asking a question, send them an email or something, I got a response within like a half an hour. And so there is absolutely no way that anybody in a large manufacturing corporation could ever respond in that fashion. Now, there've been other soap makers that I've had conversations with, and that's exactly what they were. They were conversations. They weren't short snippets of information where they read from some database. This is what we have to tell our customers. It was an actual conversation, and you're absolutely right. The level of engagement between the artisans that are out there and the community as a whole is just phenomenal.
Talk to the artisans. They want to hear your feedback. I mean, that's the message here, and they are very good people, and they are there for you. And I was astounded. Look, the one most pleasant thing was that he didn't say Google it. Go and type it into a search engine and see what you come up with.
Absolutely.
He took the time. And he apologized for not getting back to me. This is exactly what happened to me, Rick. I couldn't believe it. I thought, my goodness me, it's 3 a.m. in the US. What do I expect? And yet he got onto it as soon as he could. I mean, that is remarkable.
Yeah, it really is, and you're absolutely right. And for me, it's a lot of people use, especially younger people, use the social medias and emails, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. These artisan soap manufacturers are just as tied into that system as anything else, so they are approachable and reachable at all levels. I mean, it's whether it's an older guy like me sending them email or somebody tweeting them or whatever. They're out there. They're waiting to respond, and you're absolutely right. They enjoy the interaction with the customers to find out what the customers want and need. And in fact, going back to the Chris Cullen example, he's even gotten ideas and inspirations for some of his scents from people.
Yeah, because he's there for them. He's there for the people.
Absolutely. Now, when was the last time that Gillette changed the scent of anything?
Yes. Oh, who can remember?
Yeah, it is interesting though. We do have one artisan in the community who has at least gotten the attention of one foam in a can manufacturer to the point that they sent lawyers after him. So I thought that was rather amusing. Maybe we're getting their attention a little bit.
Good. Well, not the lawyer bit, but I'm glad we're getting the attention.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about that, but How to Grow a Mustache did a limited edition run of a soap that, if I remember correctly, started out they called it Barber Soul, and it's just an amazing story, and it's just funny. It really is. But again, it's one of those things where a big company would avoid doing something like that because they're scared of the competition, they're scared of legal action or whatever. Whereas in the artisan community, I mean, how many people make a bay rum type soap? There's a lot of them, but at the same time, they're all a different take on them. So it's really unique. You can have different scent profiles that on the label they look the same, but in person they're absolutely different.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree. And Douglas really stirs them up, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah, he really does. I think he enjoys it. It's I often wonder, when you talk to him, it's like, well, I really didn't think about it, and I really didn't mean to, but I'm wondering if he really does. It's kind of like, if you want to make a name for yourself, that's one way to do it. So it's just funny.
Oh, it is. And I think you should keep stirring the pot too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've never been one to be what you would call politically correct. To me, you're much better off in life if you speak the truth as you know it at the time. And as long as you do that, if somebody provides you with information that changes the version of, the vision of truth, okay, that's fair. But at the same time, yeah, it's a lot less confusing because I have a hard time keeping some of this stuff straight.
Yeah. I don't find that very hard to believe at all.
Well, okay, let's see. You've got the YouTube channel. You've got the Facebook group. Is there any other activities that you have out there that people need to know about?
Well, we're on Twitter as well and on Instagram. And now that's become almost a full-time occupation, trying to keep all of those platforms, fed, because that's what you're doing. You're feeding them. You're putting a lot of you're sharing a lot of stuff on those various social media platforms, and I think that that in itself is starting to take a little bit of time. But yeah, we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course on YouTube.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting is when I started, because I started the podcast as a blog, and then I decided that I was a better speaker than a typist, so I went to podcasting. And the first thing that I did was I got involved in Twitter, and it just kind of suited my style because I'm, in medical terms they would probably call it ADD or whatever term they call it nowadays for attention deficit. But I like to have my finger in about 1,000 things all at the same time just to keep my mind occupied. And I found Twitter, because of its very fast-paced interaction, I found it very appealing. And then I discovered Instagram, and it was like, well, okay, Instagram's neat, but it's taking time away from Twitter, and I really like Twitter. And then I got involved in Facebook, and at first it was like, okay, I was in one group or one community, and I was like, okay, this isn't bad. I can check in every now and then, but for the most part, I can spend time on Instagram and Twitter and I'll be all right. Recently, I found it's like, oh my gosh, I spend all my time on Facebook, very little time on Instagram, and even less time on Twitter. And it's just, there's something that at my core is fundamentally wrong.
Well, I can relate to that, Rick. You're not alone there, I have to say.
Yeah, it would be nice if I could figure out how to interact with all of them at the same time, but I can't absorb that much information all at once. It's and the thing that's wild is I enjoy all of that information.
Well, there are platforms that enable you to post once, and that will automatically put them obviously onto Facebook, Instagram, Twitter all at once. So it sends out a feed.
Yeah, and I find those, and I know those exist, and I find those unappealing because they're not very personal.
That's right.
I'd much rather feed, if I put something on Instagram, I'm going to word it one way. If I put it on Facebook, I'm going to word it another way. And if I put it on Twitter, it's going to be completely different. And I at least try to do that, and I think that's one of the appeals, at least, to those certain platforms, is that I can do that. But anyhow, it was just kind of a side comment of the troubles of content producers in trying to interact with the social media, which kind of comes back to, you think about it, how do the soap guys do it?
I don't know how they do it, but they certainly do, and they do a wonderful job.
Yes, they certainly do.
So, I mean, Darren Siebert from Soap Commander. I mean, does he sleep?
I don't think he does. I think it was from his experience in the Navy. He learned how not to.
I mean, this man is a machine. He's there commenting on one thing, then he's on to another thing. But of course, I'm watching all of this happen, so maybe I'm not sleeping as much as I should either.
Yeah, you're up in the middle of the night talking to me. Anyhow, okay. So, anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think a lot of I've heard from a lot of guys that are posting stuff on YouTube. If I could offer them some hints and some tips on how they can improve their production. One of the posts in the wet shaving group, wet shaving video group, was what camera do you use? And quite often we get stuck on the technology, and I mean, I happen to use DSLR cameras, which are not dedicated video cameras, but they're just they're a still photography camera that has video capabilities. So getting hooked on this whole, getting stuck on this whole idea that you've got to go out there and buy very expensive technology if you want to post a video is a myth. But there are three things that I would consider. The first one is lighting is very, very important. If you can, and if it's possible, shave with as much borrowed or natural light as possible. Now, if your bathroom has a window, open the thing, get as much light as you can coming through, streaming through. That often helps. Just using the lighting, the bathroom lighting itself, really creates very warm, very, very warm hues. And a lot of men, I realize, just use their mobile phones or their smartphones or their cell phones, as you call them in the States, to film their shave. And generally what happens is that those cell phones are very, very good when there is adequate light, but they struggle quite a bit and produce artifacts and noise when the lighting is quite poor. And what we think is fair lighting for a camera is really not quite enough. So I think lighting is one of the first things. The second thing is make sure that your camera there's a lot of these things like Gorilla Pods and things that you can, with a suction cap, you can stick on a mirror and just stabilize the camera. It was funny. A young man was doing a shave video about a week ago or something, and his camera actually fell off the mirror. He kept going, and he stuck it back on there, and almost as if nothing had happened, put it back on, and it just continued on with his shave. Now, that was one of my favorite videos of last week. And I commented on the video and I said, look, I really love the fact that you just kept going with this. He said, yeah, my wife wanted me to edit it out, but I thought, no, I'll just keep it going. This is the flavor of our community. This is what makes our community our community. There are people from all walks of life, and it is such a diverse group that for me, it was a beautiful moment. He didn't edit that out. He left it. He could have edited it out, but he just left it there. And I think that spoke enormously for the character of the man who said, look, I'm here to shave and I'm here to share this moment with you. I know the camera has fallen. There would have been some condensation or something on the mirror. I don't know. It must have been a steamy day where in LA. I think he's in LA. And so I just, I thought, I love this guy. I love it. He kept going.
Yeah, it's one of those things where just in that action and the fact that he kept going, you realize intrinsically that this is real, that this is life, that this is not necessarily scripted or put on. This is honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love that video. And you may know which video I'm referring to. He's only done 3, and so far, but I love that video. The other piece of advice is to just keep making videos. If that's what you like doing, keep doing it. And don't worry about the quality and the production values. All of that stuff will come. Your production values will improve. Just do it. Just keep making videos. If that's what you want to do, keep making them. And people, it's like the old line, build it and they will come. Film it and they will view it. People will view it. And I think that we sense if someone is sincere, and we sense a person's authenticity through the lens. There's no way you can hide that sort of stuff. You can't fake it till you make it. You've got to be real. You've got to keep it true and real. I mean, I could talk about microphones and miking the room up and having 3-point lighting and having a headlight and a fill light and all these technical terms, and those mean nothing if you don't believe and are not passionate in our hobby. And Chris has often said, Chris Bailey has often said, look, I just blog, and I, almost there's a self-deprecating tone. I love what Chris does. I love what he does. There is something quite endearing about what he does. There's something quite endearing about what Anthony Esposito does. This is a guy that's come straight from The Sopranos. He looks like he's in The Sopranos or something. I love this. I love it, because it shows that we are a diverse group of men from all over. Joe from Queens. I mean, this is a man who can spend 25, 30 minutes showing you part of his shave den, and he does it in 3 days, up to his second part now, and people love that. I love that. We all have something to contribute, and I think it's important. I want to get away from this elitist thing that, all my videos are better than yours, or my post is better than yours, or look at my pictures, they've been shot with a Nikon camera or a Canon. Forget all of that. Just be true to yourself, be who you are, and people will follow. People will love you. They'll share what you have to share with the world, and I think it's a wonderful thing. This is one of the most egalitarian hobbies and passions that known to mankind, because everyone puts in themselves into the video. I mean, it takes a bit of courage to put yourself up on YouTube, and some have imposed standards on themselves, but the most important standard, I feel, is to be true to yourself, and I think you can't go wrong if you're just true to yourself, and I think that's very important.
Well, I think you hit on something that's very important, and I've said it before. You can't do anything. You can't present anything well, and that's what you're doing, whether it's YouTube video, whether it's a podcast, even a blog to a certain extent. You can't present your subject matter well unless you truly have passion for what you are doing. And I would also throw out there that, if you try a YouTube video and decide you don't like doing videos, consider a podcast, because right now there are only 2 wet shaving podcasts out there, and that is this one and Mustache and Blade. There's room for more, and it's one of those things where, Chris Bailey, for example, he started he's got a YouTube channel, and he started a Facebook group specifically for YouTube channels. So we support each other. We share our experiences and our adventures. There's room for all of us, and I think that is one of the things that makes it so nice. But you're absolutely right. If I've done a few video attempts for YouTube and things like that. And I'm using an old Nikon. It's just a very simple camera. And one of the problems that I have is that when I shoot the video, my audio quality, which, being a podcaster, you kind of turn into an audio snob, I guess. But it's like I'm watching the video and I'm hearing background noise, and I'm thinking, God, I got to get rid of that, and I can't. And it just drives me crazy. So, I may do videos in the future. I don't know. I may just stick with podcasting. It's just one of those things.
Rick, I've got to say that from a technical perspective, 51% at least of a video is sound. Yeah, if you haven't got the sound right, because that's what brings the emotional component to the video. If people can't hear, if your picture is crystal clear and it's framed beautifully, and it sounds, and it's all done it's lit well. If it doesn't sound right, then there is a disconnect. People think, oh gosh, where is this person filmed this?
Yeah.
What is he in a cave or something? Where has this been filmed? The emotional component is drained from the video. So I guess maybe if you wanted to do something more professionally, guys listening out there, maybe look at sound. I mean, I'm usually mic'd up with a lavalier mic, or what they call just a little lapel mic, or sometimes I have an overhead mic which is just out of shot. Not I mean, that's a pricier option there, but there are some very inexpensive lavalier mics, and I've noticed that some guys are using them these days, and they plug straight into your cell phone, and you can record the audio onto that, and then sync it up in post-production in, I don't know, iMovie or whatever post-production software you're using. It's not really that hard. And once you get into it, you'll say, wow, I can actually hear what this guy is saying. And that's, as I say, I think that's 51% of the technical problem solved, sound.
Yeah, I actually have a little lavalier mic. It's I tried it. I was going to try to do some recording in the truck. I'm as I drive back and forth to work, but it didn't work real well. But I mean, the mic performed beautifully. It was just the background noise, because it's a condenser mic. But it was, I think I paid like $18 or $20 for it. They're not expensive, and I found that in my using of microphones, that what I really need to find is I need to find a lavalier mic or some type of boom mic that is a dynamic mic, because that way I have much more rejection of background noise that seems to just bother me a lot.
Yeah, well, I feel your pain, brother. I know exactly what you're talking about. But these are the challenges, I guess, that we face. Look, I don't know. I guess the message is keep on doing what you're doing out there, guys. If you're listening to this and you're wondering about your productions, the productions improve. Doesn't matter where you start. It's just we all start somewhere, but just keep at it. Please do not be discouraged by what you hear or even what you see. Just use it as a point of reference, and say, look, I aspire to do something like, I mean, I've started to incorporate a little bit of silliness into my videos. I want to incorporate a bit more humor, because people don't want to see a guy standing in front of a black background every single week talking about a shape. It's got to be different. You've got to change things around a little bit. Yeah, can you imagine if you had the same guest for every podcast?
Yeah, that would be a bit boring. The other thing, the other piece of advice that I would give, and I don't know if you've had much experience with this, is some people out there, especially with the anonymity of the internet, can become quite negative. And that's something that also, when it first happens to you, it can be extremely discouraging. But please take heart, keep going. Keep working at it, keep trying, and we're not all like that.
Absolutely not. When I got my first thumbs down for one of my YouTube videos, and for one which I felt I really didn't deserve a thumbs down, I then thought about it, and I thought, you know what? No, I did deserve a thumbs down for that, because I felt that I shouldn't have got a thumbs down. It was a learning experience. All of that it's a learning experience that presents itself. I remember how I felt. I didn't feel very nice, but I thought, you know what? That's fine. Let's just move on. Just keep doing it. Do not be discouraged by anyone that tries to, the haters, as we call them. Don't worry about that. Just keep going. Remain positive. Remain positive. And in fact, I think that if they downvote you in an abstract sort of way, it's actually a compliment. They've taken the time to watch your video. Perhaps there are feelings of envy or something there. I don't know what is going on at a deeper level, but you've got their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and one of the things that I have heard before that I thought was very, very appropriate is, for the ones that are very negative, they're typically not the ones that are on YouTube or on the air or in any other forum other than just, a Facebook page or a comment or something like that. And so to a certain extent, if they're not out there doing it, they don't necessarily know what the people are going through that are doing it. They don't know the time and effort that goes into it, and they don't appreciate it. That's another thing that I've run into is people sometimes they want answers handed to them. And in wet shaving, for example, like you said, there are so many variables. Sometimes there is no easy answer because there's a human element as well that can't necessarily be defined. I can talk about brushes. I can get the same brushes you have. I can talk about razors and blades and soaps, soap bowls, everything. I can have everything exactly the way you do and have a completely different experience because of me. And so you can sit there and say, I love this stuff, I love this soap, I love this, I love that, and I can try it and say, God, that sucked. And we're both right.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I just hope that that whatever negativity is out there just implodes. There's no room for it, but I understand why it occurs, but I don't understand why someone would trouble themselves with participating in it. Please don't be discouraged, gentlemen. If you want to get out there and you want to put on, I'd like to see more YouTube videos out there. I think, if anything, the fact that we're talking about YouTube videos and YouTube shaving videos is a good thing because it brings it to the attention that it's something that everyone can participate in. It's not hard. All you need is a cell phone or a video camera or even a DSLR and just a passion for our hobby, and off you go. I mean, it really is. You've got to start though. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's something that oftentimes gets in people's way is that initial fear. And once you take that first step, then you can start diminishing that fear and working towards an end goal. But a lot of things in life do not happen because of that small sliver of fear that somebody has that may have been put into somebody, decades ago when they were a child or something, and they saw somebody fail at something and they said, boy, I don't want to do that. But the thing that is interesting is oftentimes the people that succeed at things are people who have failed multiple times. I mean, if you think about it, and I've told my kids and my scouts this, there is nothing in life that you are successful at that you haven't failed miserably at first. You didn't breathe well the first time you tried it. You didn't eat and swallow well the first time you tried it. You didn't walk the first time you tried it. It's one of those things. Why do we think something as complicated technically as making a perfect YouTube video is? Not to say that just getting a video out there isn't relatively easy, but to make that perfect video presentation or a perfect audio presentation, there are things that need to be learned, and those don't come intrinsically. It's not, I look at my podcast gear, my the microphones and the mixers and the recorders and all this. It's not intuitively obvious to the casual observer.
That's right. That's right. And quite often there is a steep learning curve, and eventually you get to master that. But then you think, there are other challenges that have presented themselves. I mean, how do I get this podcast up onto, I don't know, iTunes, or how do I get it up onto YouTube? There are there's constant challenges, and we're always learning, I think, and we're a community of learners, I think, and that's the most important thing and the most valuable thing that we have, I believe, Rick.
That's the other thing that I found very interesting about the community as a whole. A lot of the people that I run into are the types of people that have had multiple hobbies and are the type of personality that is in fact constantly challenging themselves and learning and shifting direction just because, well, they can, and I find that intriguing, and it's just a nuance that I've run into, and from my aspect, very much like the teacher aspect. How do you reach everyone? How do you package this, if you will, for all of the different personality types? And so it's another one of those interesting nuances that you kind of drift off into as you're contemplating what you're doing.
Yes, and I'm sure that's a whole new podcast. That's an entire podcast just right there.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Anyhow, we've been going on for a while. It's probably way past your bedtime.
That's okay. That's okay. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Rick.
Well, it absolutely has, Con. And first off, I do greatly appreciate your willingness to come on to the podcast. It's like I've said before, you've got things to do. You spend a lot of time on your YouTube videos, and like I said, the production value is evident. Just being willing to sit down and talk to me for a period of time is a sacrifice of your time. And I honestly want to say thank you, because not many people understand that it's not just sitting down and conversing, but there's some thought and a little bit of preparation in it, and so I would like to say thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, hopefully you liked the interview. I know I did. It was very late in Australia when we finally got off the phone. Having Con stay up and talk to me till the wee hours of the evening was really quite special. Don't forget to check out his YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out his Facebook group. Also, check out Shave the Man on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, thank you for listening. Well, that concludes this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have some suggestions or would like a topic covered, drop me an email at BrushnSoapnBlade@gmail.com or give me a call at 864-372-6234 or contact us on Twitter at BrushnBlade. You can also visit us at our blog, BrushnSoapnBlade.wordpress.com. As always, we're available on iTunes and Stitcher.